My name is Vera Calloway, 28 years old. July heat in Boise has a way of making even forgiveness feel heavy. The restaurant air buzzed with conversation and cheap jazz, the kind meant to hide tension, but never quite does. My sister's birthday banner drooped over a long table cluttered with half-empty wine glasses, breadcrumbs, and laughter that wasn't kind. I'd spent weeks preparing this moment, a peace offering, or so I thought. Inside the sealed envelope was a note and a check for $6,000, enough to cover Jessica's rent for 6 months. My chest was tight with something like hope as I slid it across the table. "It's for you," I said, forcing a smile. She tore it open, eyes scanning the note. A small smirk tugged at her mouth. "You think this means you're forgiven?" The words hit harder than the summer heat outside. Around us, conversation slowed, forks paused midair. My mother, Patricia, tensed. My aunt chuckled nervously. Then the laughter started, low at first, then rolling, overlapping, until it filled the room. I stood there, my pulse drumming. "Forgiven?" I repeated, though I knew exactly what she meant. The scarf, the stupid red scarf I'd given her 10 years ago when I was 18, broke, and naive enough to think thoughtfulness counted. "You remember," Jessica said, her voice sharp with victory, "the thrift store reject? Guess you're still trying to make up for it." Her words landed like old bruises being pressed. "That was a decade ago," I said quietly. "I thought we moved past it." "We did," Patricia said, her tone too bright, too brittle. "We're just teasing, honey." But her eyes darted away, to the purse beside her, where an envelope poked out, the kind marked, "Final Notice." Jessica leaned back, swirling her wine. "You really don't get it," she said, shaking her head. "You can't buy forgiveness, Vera, especially not with small checks." I could hear my heart beat. I could feel every breath in that room like it was borrowed. "Then never mind," I said, snatching the envelope back before anyone could stop me. The laughter died. "Vera," Patricia warned, voice sharp as a blade, "don't make a scene." "No," I said, my voice trembling but steady enough. "I've made enough." Jessica scoffed, crossing her arms. "You're so dramatic." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm also done." The silence that followed was almost merciful. Then Patricia sighed, setting her napkin down like she was burying something. "You've always been sensitive. We're family. You can't just—" "I can," I cut in, because I finally understood that sentence for what it really was. A leash disguised as love. Jessica smirked again. That same smile she used when she borrowed money and called it help. "You'll regret this," she said softly. "Maybe I would, but not tonight." I left the envelope on the table, unopened, the ink of her name smudged by my palm. The air outside hit me like a slap. Thick, hot, alive with the hum of traffic and the smell of oil and roses from the planter boxes near the curb. The laughter from inside still echoed as I reached my car. For a second, I thought about turning back, about smoothing it over like I always did. But then I remembered how many times I'd already done that. Paid their rent, covered their bills, fixed their emergencies. Every apology had a price tag. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the wheel. My reflection in the windshield looked like someone caught between daughter and stranger. Through the restaurant window, I saw Jessica lift her wine glass again, her lips moving in a story I couldn't hear. Probably about me. Probably about how selfish I was. I smiled to myself, a tired, dangerous smile. "Fine," I whispered. "Let me be selfish." The steering wheel was hot under my hands. My heart still hammered, but beneath it was something quieter, steadier, the first pulse of relief. As I drove away, the city blurred into streaks of neon and asphalt. The night pressed close, heavy but clean. They thought I'd crumble without their approval, that I'd call tomorrow, apologize, send the check again. Maybe that's what I would have done a year ago. But tonight, all I could think about was how light my hands felt without the envelope. By the time I reached home, my phone had already buzzed 3 times. Mom, then Jessica, then unknown. I didn't answer. The screen lit the room in pale blue, then went dark. For the first time in years, I let it. In the quiet, I noticed the small things, the hum of my refrigerator, the steady tick of the wall clock, my own breathing. Slow, deliberate, mine. I set my purse down, unzipped it, and found the scarf. Not the same one, but similar. A new one I'd bought years later, soft, crimson, folded neatly at the bottom like a ghost of the girl who tried too hard. I unfolded it, stared at the color in the dim light, and realized it wasn't guilt that had kept it there. It was proof. that I'd always been trying to give something beautiful to people who only saw the price tag. I laid it across the chair, where it caught the faint breeze from the window, and whispered the words I'd been too afraid to say for years. No more. They'd call me selfish tomorrow. They'd say I ruined dinner, that I embarrassed them. But deep down I already knew this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. The night outside thickened, the heat pressing in, but inside the air felt cooler, lighter, mine. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a walking apology. I felt free. The next morning, sunlight crept through the blinds, streaking across my kitchen table like a reminder that life doesn't pause for anyone's guilt. My phone was face down, vibrating every few minutes with messages I didn't need to read to understand. I poured coffee, the bitter kind I liked, and opened my laptop instead. Numbers had always made more sense than people. For years, I'd covered their bills automatically. Rent, car insurance, utilities, even Jessica's credit card emergencies. I'd set up transfers so I didn't have to think about them, as if making the withdrawals invisible made the debt emotional instead of financial. I pulled up my banking history. Rows of transactions scrolled like an autopsy report of misplaced love. Patricia Calloway, $450 electric. Jessica Grant, $700 rent. Patricia, $120 internet. The total over 5 years made my stomach flip. More than $58,000. I whispered it aloud. 58. It didn't sound real until I said it. The phone buzzed again. Mom first, then Jessica. I ignored them both until the buzzing turned to ringing. I answered on the fourth call. Vera, what's wrong with you? Patricia's voice was already halfway to tears. Jessica said you embarrassed her. You walked out in front of the whole family. I did, I said, steady. She's your sister. She's been through a lot. And after everything, you send her that envelope. That she ripped open to mock me, I said, my tone sharper than intended. She didn't mean it like that. She meant it exactly like that. A pause. I could picture her, pacing, hand clutching that old cordless phone, the same one she'd used for every emergency request. You're breaking this family apart, she said finally. I laughed, a small, tired sound. I think the cracks were already there, Mom. I just stopped patching them with my money. She gasped like I'd cursed. Don't be cruel. I'm not, I said quietly. I'm just done. When she hung up, I stared at the phone until it went black again. Then I did something I'd never done before. I opened my banking app and turned off every auto payment linked to them. One by one, click, confirm, click, confirm. Each confirmation felt like oxygen. Minutes later, a text from Jessica flashed on screen. Car payment due today. Send $300. It's the least you can do after last night. I typed a single dollar, attached a note. Enough for now. Hit send. Almost immediately, another text. What the hell is this supposed to mean? I didn't reply. The next call came from Patricia again. You can't just send your sister $1, she snapped. I can, I said, and I did. Her voice cracked, a mix of outrage and fear. You've changed, Vera. I had to, I said, and hung up. Silence returned, a sharp, sacred kind of quiet. That weekend, Zachary, my boyfriend, invited me to his parents' barbecue across town. I hesitated. My family had turned even casual meals into battlegrounds. Gatherings meant walking on glass. But he smiled that easy, steady smile and said, Come, you could use a real family dinner. The phrase stung. Real family. But I went. Their house sat at the edge of Boise's foothills, white siding, glowing in the afternoon sun. Kids chased a dog across the lawn. The smell of grilled corn and mesquite carried through the yard. Zach's dad flipped burgers. His mom set out lemonade, both moving in a rhythm that looked like kindness without performance. Vera, welcome, his mom said, waving me over. Grab a plate, honey. Honey, no one in my family ever used words like that unless they needed something. I tried to relax. Zach pressed a drink into my hand. You okay? I'm trying, I said. He smiled. That's enough. Then a voice beside me, warm, curious. So you're the designer. I turned to meet Ava, his younger sister. She couldn't have been more than 22, paint flecks on her nails, hair up in a messy bun that somehow worked. Zach says you make things beautiful, she said. I laughed softly. I try. Some things fight back. She tilted her head. He also said your family's giving you a hard time. The air shifted. I waited for pity, the kind that makes you small. Instead, she shrugged. Their loss, she said simply. Her certainty startled me. You don't even know them. I don't have to. You showed up here with your head held high. That tells me enough. It wasn't much, but it cracked something open. The rest of the evening, Ava kept close, introducing me to cousins, handing me paper plates, asking about my sketches. When she laughed, it wasn't sharp like Jessica's. It sounded like relief. As the sun dipped low, Zach's dad started a fire pit. His mom handed out blankets. No one argued about who owed what. No guilt, no whispered scorekeeping, just the easy hum of people content to be together. I watched them and realized how foreign peace can feel when you've lived on edge. Ava nudged me. You're smiling, she said. I forgot what it felt like, I admitted. She grinned, handing me a glass of lemonade. Then don't forget again. Driving home that night, the city lights shimmered through my windshield. My phone was quiet finally. No missed calls, no demands. At a red light, I caught my reflection. Tired but lighter. I thought about the $1 I'd sent, about the look on Jessica's face when she saw it. For once, the guilt didn't come creeping back. Because that dollar wasn't petty. It was a message. Enough for now. Enough forever. When I pulled into my driveway, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for 10 years. The night air was cool, calm, real. Inside, the scarf still lay draped over the chair from the night before. I brushed my fingers across it and smiled. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd start sketching again. Something for me, not for them. It was a quiet September evening when my doorbell rang. The kind of silence that feels earned. I'd spent the day working on a freelance design project, my laptop surrounded by color swatches, empty coffee mugs, and a calm I hadn't known in years. The calm didn't last. Through the peephole, my mother, Patricia. Her hair was pulled back too tight, her lipstick slightly smudged, eyes wild in that way that always meant bad news. Vera, we need to talk, she said, pushing past me before I could speak. She'd always done that. Walked in like the house still belonged to her. Mom, what are you doing here? She sat on my couch, clutching her purse like it held her last chance. The bank's going to take the house, she said finally. I owe $7,000. You have to help. I stood there, the words landing somewhere between disbelief and déjà vu. You have to help, she said, not, can you? Never a question, always a script. Mom, I said softly, I told you I can't keep fixing everything. Her eyes filled instantly. This isn't about fixing, Vera. It's about family. Your sister and I have nowhere else to go. Family. That word again. Heavy, rehearsed, weaponized. I'd grown up believing it meant unconditional love. Turns out it meant unconditional obligation. I've given everything I could, I said, voice trembling more from anger than guilt. Years of bills, rent, debts, and you never once asked how I was doing. She stood, her face hardening. You think you're better than us now. You have a nice apartment, a boyfriend, some money, and suddenly you forget who raised you. That's not what this is. It is, she said, her tone sharp enough to cut. You're heartless, Vera. I'd heard the word before, but this time it didn't land. I wasn't the daughter who cried over every accusation anymore. I was the woman who'd learned that saying no wasn't cruelty. It was survival. Mom, I said quietly, you need to leave. Her mouth opened, then closed. She shook her head, muttering, you'll regret this, before walking out. The door clicked shut. The sound was final, like a lock turning on an old life. An hour later, the bell rang again. I almost didn't answer. When I did, Jessica stood there, arms crossed, expression already loaded. You're really doing this? She said, storming inside. You're letting Mom lose the house? Jessica, I'm not paying another dime, I said, steady this time. Of course you're not, she snapped. You think you're some saint because you finally grew a backbone? You owe us. Owe you? For what? For everything. You ruined Mom's birthday with that stupid scarf. You embarrassed her at the restaurant. I laughed. Couldn't help it. You're still talking about that scarf? 10 years later? Her jaw tightened. You did it to humiliate me. I stepped closer. I was 18. I worked at a coffee shop. I bought you something I thought you'd like. You knew it was ugly, she hissed. No, Jess, I said. You just needed something to hold over me. That scarf gave you power. Her eyes flashed. You're abandoning us, Vera. No one will want you when you're alone. There it was, the final trick. Fear. I smiled. Then I'll learn to want myself. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and sent her, 2 wahs with a note that read, Time to grow up. Her phone pinged. She glanced down, saw it, and her face went red. You think this is funny? It's more than you deserve, I said quietly. Now get out. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she spun toward the door, muttering every insult she could find. The door slammed so hard the frame rattled. When the echo faded, the silence that followed was the kind that changes you. I sank onto the couch, staring at the half-empty coffee mug on the table, the glow from my laptop still waiting where I'd left it. $2. It wasn't about money. It was about closing a wound. For years, I'd mistaken responsibility for love, convinced that if I kept giving, they'd finally see my worth. But love without respect is just dependence in disguise. I looked around my apartment, the art prints on the wall, the small potted plant by the window, my sketches spread across the table, and realized for the first time this space wasn't temporary. It wasn't just a stop between rescues. It was mine. No guilt, no phone calls, no emergencies that weren't mine to fix. Just quiet, just peace. I leaned back and whispered to the ceiling, let them call me heartless. Because heartless was finally starting to feel like freedom. October rolled in with the kind of cool, forgiving air that made Boise feel new again. The leaves turned copper and gold outside my apartment window, and for the first time in months, the only messages lighting up my phone were from clients. Not my mother, not my sister. The silence wasn't loneliness anymore, it was clarity. That Thursday afternoon, as I was sorting color palettes for a logo design, the doorbell rang. I froze, heart leaping, an instinct left over from years of unwelcome visits. But when I peeked through the peephole, the figure on the other side wasn't who I expected. It was Ava. Zachary's sister, holding something long and rolled up in her paint-stained hands. When I opened the door, she grinned, her eyes bright as sunlight after rain. I made something for you, she said. For me? Yeah, she said, stepping inside without hesitation. You've been working nonstop. I thought maybe you needed a reminder. She handed me the roll, tied with a red ribbon. I untied it carefully, the paper unfurling across my hands. It was a drawing. Bold lines, vivid colors, the Boise skyline reimagined in strokes of light and shadow. And there, right in the middle of the city street, stood a figure that looked unmistakably like me, standing tall, alone, but surrounded by radiance. I couldn't speak for a moment. You like it? Ava asked, suddenly nervous. Ava, I whispered, my throat tight. It's beautiful. She smiled. You're always creating things for other people. Clients, family, whoever. I figured someone should create something for you. It was such a simple sentence, but it cracked something inside me open. No one had ever given me something without strings attached. Not once. Before I could stop myself, I hugged her. Thank you. She laughed softly into my shoulder. You're stuck with me now, she said. A few nights later, Zachary invited me to dinner at his parents' house. I hesitated. Even after months of warmth, a small part of me still expected kindness to have conditions. But when we arrived, his mother greeted me with her familiar soft smile. Vera, come in, sweetheart. You're family now. Family. The word used to ache. Now it just felt different. The dining room smelled like rosemary chicken and buttered rolls. The table was lit by warm bulbs instead of candles, but it still felt like ceremony. The kind I'd always imagined but never known. Zach's dad, William, sat at the end of the table flipping through a sketchbook. When he saw me, he waved me over. Got a minute, Vera? I joined him, curious. He turned the sketchbook toward me, blueprints of a community park I recognized from downtown. We're rebuilding the old community center, he said, his tone alive with excitement. New mural, new signage, maybe something artistic to make it stand out. His gaze met mine. Zach showed me your portfolio. You've got a real eye. What do you say? Want to design it? I blinked. Me? He chuckled. Yes, you. Unless there's another Vera Calloway hiding somewhere. My pulse kicked up. Yes, absolutely. I'd love to. He smiled and slid a folder across the table. Deadlines, contact sheets, proposed budgets. It was official. Not pity, not a favor. Opportunity.
Hey.
The rest of the night blurred into warmth. Zach's mom talked about her book club. Ava showed me photos of her latest painting. Zach's hand found mine under the table. Quiet, steady, real. At one point, I caught myself laughing. Full and unguarded. The sound startled me. It had been years since laughter didn't feel like armor. Later that night, back home, I spread Ava's drawing and William's folder across my kitchen table. The two of them, side by side, looked like a map and a mirror, one showing me where I could go, the other who I'd become. I stayed up sketching, pencil flying across the page, ideas pouring out faster than I could name them. Bright murals, welcoming arches, abstract sculptures that told stories about new beginnings. For years, I'd poured my energy into keeping other people's worlds from falling apart. Now, I was finally building my own. At some point, I looked up from my sketchbook and realized the scarf, that crimson one I'd left draped over the chair weeks ago, was gone. Not missing, just put away. Folded into a drawer without ceremony, without meaning. It didn't feel like erasure. It felt like closure. 2 weeks later, while I was painting sample swatches for the community project, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. "Vera?" a voice said, hesitant. It was Marianne, an old neighbor from my childhood street. "Marianne, hi. I wasn't sure you'd pick up," she said softly. "I just thought you should know. Jessica's working down at the diner on 5th. She's struggling." The words landed softly, not sharply. "I see," I said. "She mentioned your name once. Sounded like she misses you." I stared at the half-finished paint sample on my desk, bright yellow bleeding into gray. "Maybe," I said, "but missing someone doesn't mean you're ready to change." Marianne sighed. "You always were the strong one." I thanked her, hung up, and went back to work. The guilt that used to rise instantly didn't come. Instead, I felt something quieter. Not joy, not spite, just acceptance. Jessica was surviving. I was living. There's a difference. By winter, Boise shimmered under frost. The community center project was nearly complete, and a new email sat in my inbox from a local coffee shop owner. They'd seen my designs through Williams' network. They wanted me to create their branding. When I read it, I laughed out loud, startling myself. The girl who once gave too much was now being asked to build and to be paid for it. I poured another coffee, opened a fresh document, and started sketching again. The colors came easy this time. Bright ones, honest ones, and somewhere deep inside, the faintest whisper, "This is what it feels like to finally be free." By February, the city was wrapped in frost and possibility. Snow glittered on rooftops, and for once, Boise looked soft, like it had forgiven itself overnight. Inside my apartment, sketches and client briefs covered every inch of my dining table. My life had gone from chaos to color, from crisis calls to contracts. That morning, I traced the final lines of the community center mural design. An abstract sunrise stretching over hands intertwined, a symbol of resilience, of rebuilding. My signature would go in the corner, small but visible. My name, my work, mine. The mural unveiling was set for spring, and William had already written to the city board praising my eye for emotion. I saved the email in a folder called Proof That I Belong. My phone buzzed. This time, it wasn't Patricia or Jessica. Those names had vanished from my recent calls. It was Zachary, his voice carrying the familiar warmth that grounded me. "Pack a bag," he said. "What? Why?" "Because you've been living at your desk. We're getting out of town." I laughed. "You're kidnapping me?" "Exactly. A harmless one. 2 days. Oregon coast. Cabin near Cannon Beach." I hesitated. The idea of leaving, of actually relaxing, felt foreign. But the truth was, I'd earned it. "Okay," I said finally, "but I'm picking the playlist." He grinned through the line. "Deal." That weekend, we drove west, the mountains fading into a thin mist that turned gold in the morning light. The farther we went, the quieter it got, until all I could hear was the sound of tires against wet pavement and Zachary humming along to an old Fleetwood Mac song. When we reached the cabin, I stepped out into air that smelled like salt and cedar. The ocean stretched wide and endless before us. Zachary leaned against the hood, hands in his pockets. "You look lighter," he said. "I feel lighter." "You've been through hell and somehow built a garden out of it," he said. I smiled. "You make it sound poetic." "It is," he said simply. That night, the wind battered the cabin walls while we cooked dinner together. Mismatched ingredients, too much garlic, not enough planning. The kind of imperfection that feels like life, not survival. Afterward, we sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, the Pacific dark and massive before us. I traced the rim of my mug with my thumb and said quietly, "Sometimes I think about calling them, just to see how they are." Zachary didn't answer right away. He just let the question breathe. Then he said, "You could. But what would you want from that call? I stared into the horizon. Not forgiveness, not even closure, just to know they're okay. He nodded slowly. You've already done your part, Vera. The rest is theirs. I leaned my head on his shoulder, listening to the ocean crash and pull back. Relentless, cleansing, unstoppable. A week later, we returned home to Boise. My inbox was full again, but this time with opportunity. The coffee shop branding had launched, and the owner wrote, "Customers love it. Can we hire you again for another location?" I sat back, reading it twice. There was no trace of the girl who'd begged to be seen in her mother's kitchen or paid for love in installments. I sent a reply. Yes, but my rates have gone up. One evening, as I locked up my apartment, I saw an envelope on the doormat. No return address. Just my name in neat cursive, Patricia's handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a short letter. Vera, we didn't understand what we were asking of you. Maybe we never will, but I hope you're doing well. Mom. No apology, no plea, just acknowledgement. Small, human, and maybe, in its own way, enough. I folded it once and placed it in a drawer beside Ava's drawing and a copy of my first design contract. Artifacts of a Life Rebuilt. By spring, the community center was finished. The mural stretched high above the entrance, sunlight breaking over open hands. When the mayor gave his speech, people clapped. Cameras flashed. I stood in the crowd beside Zachary, Ava, and William, feeling the strange, dizzy weight of joy. William leaned over and whispered, "You did this." I smiled, eyes stinging. "No," I said softly. "We did." Later that night, after the ceremony, Ava handed me a bouquet of wildflowers tied with a red ribbon. "For luck," she said. I laughed. "You realize red ribbons and I have a complicated history." "Then consider this a rewrite," she said. And maybe it was. That summer, when I launched my own small studio, Callaway Creative, I hung Ava's drawing on the wall above my desk. The figure in the center still stood alone, but the light around her seemed to shine even brighter now. Sometimes clients asked what inspired me to start my business. I'd smile and tell them the truth. Because once I gave too much, I'd say, and then I learned how to give to myself.
Mom.
If you're still listening to my story, here's what I want you to know. Family isn't defined by who shares your blood. It's who shows up for your light, not your wallet, not your guilt. Saying no isn't cruel. It's how you make room for the people who will say yes to you in the right way. Forgiveness doesn't always sound like, "I'm sorry." Sometimes it's silence, distance, or a single sentence in an envelope that says, "We didn't understand." And that's okay, because peace isn't found in being needed. It's found in being free. So if you've ever been the one who gave too much, let this be your reminder. You're allowed to keep something for yourself. I did, and I've never felt lighter.